Good morning, everyone. We're having so much fun here, figuring out all the technology of having multiple computers and multiple people and no echoes. I'm Ellie Choate, and this is my friend Greg Adamson, and clearly we are playing harp and cello this morning. I would like to talk this morning about how to write multi-instrumental arrangements. My inspiration for this was some work that I did some years ago during the summer months for the Hour of Power broadcast on Sunday mornings from Crystal Cathedral. And in the summer months, they didn't want to hire a whole orchestra every single Sunday, so they would have small chamber groups playing. And so I was hired to make some arrangements with harp and string quartet, or harp and brass quintet, or anyway, harp with other instruments. And I got several of these done, and I thought, well, I should just make a CD of these. So that's why the title of this workshop is Crown of Glory, because that's what I named my CD, and it has arrangements for some solo harp arrangements and many other instruments involved.
And you all need this CD, all of you.
I'm not paying him extra. The first thing that I think about when I think about anything that involves other instruments, we often, aside from doing arranging for harp and a friend or more than one friend, we are often asked to play during church services and, just play along on the hymns. Just play along, as you see fit. Well, the thing is, in those instances, and in this instance of arranging for any other instruments with harp, it's really important that we think of the harp not as a solo instrument and not as I'm going to play all these notes that are in the hymnal, but to do something that will make us more audible by playing different notes and thinking of the harp orchestrally. Our orchestra parts, for those of you who play in orchestra, you know that often we'll think of Tchaikovsky, we're going doing all these arpeggios or big chords while there's something, the strings will have these string pads and we're going blah, 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 this kind of thing. So it's really important to think of the harp in that function, and that you don't always play the melody necessarily, but you do something in the chords. Or another device that I like to use is glissandos, but you don't want to overdo it. And if all you do on a hymn is a glissando into the chorus, or a glissando at the end of the hymn or something like that, it's just enough color, and you make the harp more audible that way because it's doing something that is different from what everybody else is doing, and it's an idiomatic sound for the instrument, so it speaks really well. For example, like when I do Christmas services, it takes some courage to do a glissando into the downbeat of a song. But say you're doing Joy to the World, you don't even need to have a harmonic scale. You don't have to have that. It's just, we want something bright. Joy to the world. Now this takes real courage, and don't do it on the first beat. Don't do it on the first verse, but on the second verse, when you know when the organ's going to come in on the second verse, heaven and nature sing joy to the, or you can do something like that. It's whoa, and the congregation is whoa, I love the harp, So it takes some courage to do those things, but it doesn't take as much courage to do something into the chorus. And you'll be hearing me do some of those kinds of glissandos and glissandos at the end. Those are colorful things that the harp can do. Also, I use a lot of arpeggios, and I play a lot of notes. I probably play way too many notes. And I know there's a lot of talk about how lovely it is to hear just simple things on the harp, but I'm sorry, I'm not that person. I live to excess. I'm big, I can't help it. And so, for example, in a couple of these things that we're going to be playing today, I use arpeggios rhythmically, like in one of them I'm doing triplet arpeggios, and it gives a rhythmic drive to the music, and it helps the other musicians to stay with you if you are dead on your time. Just that undulating thing, and it makes the harp audible and you're doing something that you already know how to do. You've done this thousands of times. In deciding what to do with other instruments, today, I know when I talked to Bonnie about doing this workshop, and I initially thought, oh, I should have a quartet with me and then we can demonstrate all of this stuff. And then I thought, you know, really, A, that's not very practical. And B, I thought it might be interesting to use an instrument that A, has a very large range and that you may or may not be familiar with using as a solo instrument, but it blends with so many other instruments. And besides, no offense to the violin and flute world, and they are a world, but we all know what those sound like. And we all know that they almost always have the function of playing the melody. And so I asked Greg to join me today because it's really important to think beyond just a melodic function. And the cello has such a broad range. It can function like a bass player, but you know, they're not bass players. So but they do play bass lines often, and in orchestra they're doubled with the bass so often. So the bass player is just an octave lower than they are, which gives it that that nice texture. I love the way the cello blends with the harp because you probably are aware when you're playing in somewhere that the low end of the harp just disappears. You know, you can just wail away with your left hand on those wires, but it's going to go to the third row, and beyond that it's not as audible. It doesn't balance as well. So it's really nice to have in your group to have a low instrument like the cello to help you to reinforce that bass line. And it also, it creates more sympathetic vibration in the harp, which maybe I'm the only person to notice that because I'm really close to it, but what a nice incentive to get to feel better about what I'm playing because I get to have all of that increased vibration. It's really fun. The thing is that when you're thinking about doing things with other people, if you haven't done this before, I think it would be useful for you to just find a friend who wants to play duets, even if it's a flute player. And then try to have an awareness of what that person is comfortable doing. You don't want to do some kind of gymnastic, virtuosic playing in some register that they aren't comfortable in, because then they're only going to be angst-ridden and it's not going to be as much fun for them. And we want everything to be really fun. Everything has to be fun. And so the first thing is to understand who you're dealing with. And the next thing is even more important, and that is to just listen to music that instrument plays. Listen to that. If you're playing in an orchestra, or if you're playing in a church group or anything with that instrument, listen to the way that they function in that group. Listen to the way that that other composers have written for them and how they blend in the texture of the sound. And think about how you can capitalize on things that are comfortable for them and that sound really good. For example, oboe. Everybody, when they think of the oboe, they think of, you know, these sort of sentimental, melancholy things that are always in that sort of mid-range. But why write, you know, these gymnastic things up in some range that's uncomfortable for them when they sound so beautiful when they're just doing those gorgeous melodies or filling in with an inner voice that's really effective like that. So think about what your friends' capabilities are and what they enjoy doing and what they can sound good doing. And also just listen. And you already know more than you think you know because you've been listening to music your whole life. But you can listen in different ways. You can listen when you're listening to a pop tune on the radio. Listen to what is creating that rhythmic drive. Sometimes it's not a drummer. Sometimes it's that bass player. Boom, ba ba boom, ba ba boom, and that's keeping everything going. And you can approximate that with another instrument that you make an arrangement with. Or if somebody's singing a melody and there's some really interesting line underneath that. Don't listen to the melody. You already know the melody. Listen to those inner voices, those inner, like the backup singers. Listen to the backup singers. Ray Charles and the Rayettes, baby. Listen to those Rayettes, you know, the Supremes. Diana Ross and the Supremes. Listen to the Supremes. What are they doing? And they have those close harmonies. You can do things like that with the harp and by itself, but you can do those and distribute those parts among however many people you want to use. So you didn't come here to only hear me talk.
Do you want to hear me talk? May I jump in?
But of course.
So what Ellie's talking about here with regard to the cello specifically functioning as a bass instrument, she's kind of reinventing the wheel for us, because this has been around for a long time. When we were all back in college, we encountered trio sonatas, you know, by Bach or Telemann or Handel. And I was confounded like everyone else was, because the cover said trio sonata. However, there were 4 people playing. And that's where an instrument like the cello or one of the members of the gamba family, or maybe the bassoon, would come into play to help bolster the left hand of the harpsichord, the low notes. And you would see 2 violins or a flute and a violin out in front, and then the harpsichord, and way back in the back next to the left hand of the harpsichordist is that poor cellist who never gets any credit, but they're there to just bolster and reinforce that bass line. So you're going to hear some of that
of course
today. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm done for now.
So let's do some of this. The cello has, as I have mentioned now 100 times, it has a tremendous range. It's tuned an octave below the viola. You know, it goes bass, contrabass is, you know, stand-up bass is the lowest, and it's an octave below the cello. The viola is tuned the same as the cello, but an octave higher, and then the violin is higher than that. But the cello has the ability to play in the viola range and also into the violin range. And so I'm torturing Greg this morning by asking him, please, in my nicest voice, to play some melodies in high ranges as well, so that you can hear if I'm playing exactly the same notes in the accompaniment. I want you to hear the difference between what it sounds like in these different ranges, to have the melody in these different places, because the blend is a little bit different. So let's do that first. These are melodic functions. Also, maybe we'll just go straight through this. Just to talk a little bit about another concept that I use all the time. I have this sort of fascination with having more than one melody going on at the same time. I think it's because I just fell in love big time with Bach when I was a kid. And once I figured out that there was such a thing as polyphony, it blows my mind. And then in the Welsh tradition, there is a tradition in Wales called Penichlion, where it's 2 different melodies that are being sung simultaneously. And the most authentic way is for a harpist to play one melody and herself or himself sing the other melody. As a public service, I will not be singing today. I've already sung too much, and probably a few people have dropped off the call. So at the end of this arrangement of It Is Well With My Soul, you will hear another melody coming in that is compatible with It Is Well With My Soul. And I just somehow was inspired to put these 2 together. It didn't come from me. I can just tell you that. You know, sometimes when you're doing things and it's just like, it just comes through you. And that's a very exciting thing. And so that's what happened here at the end. Okay, your turn. So can you hear what I'm talking about? So you hear the difference between the triplets, you know, and also the way that I arrange it. Sometimes I think ever since I was a kid and I sang in children's choirs at church and that kind of stuff. And our choir director, she was just a crack up. She sang alto. And so she always had us singing parts. I mean, with kids, you just never tell them anything's hard. Never tell them anything is hard. So she would have us singing in at least 2 parts all the time. And I had a wide ranging voice. And so sometimes I would sing an alto part or sometimes a descant part or something like that. But I got really used to having to kind of hold my own on a different line. And so when I listen to music, I almost never am singing the melody. I hardly ever do. I'm always trying to find some little way to make a melodic inner voice or a little descant on top of that. And that's the other thing I'm talking about when you listen to background singers, or, you know, like if you listen to a duet, you know, like Ray Charles did Genius Loves Company album with, you know, he was the first one to do this duo album with him and other artists. And, you know, people like that, or Tony Bennett's done them. I mean, a lot of people now are doing these duo albums. But listen to them, especially when they're singing together, and how they play off of each other. And you can do, I mean, we only have one voice with the harp right now, but you can do that with a combination of other instruments. You can have a string quartet, or you can have, I mean, on my arrangements, some of them are with flute, violin, cello, flute, violin, yeah, that's right, viola, cello. I forgot the viola. Sorry about that. But you, or like with a woodwind quintet, or you can substitute whatever you have. Just be creative with whoever you have. Clarinet and harp sound really lovely. And when I finished, I have a thing on here that has clarinet on it. And one of my friends, who is a harpist and shall remain nameless, called me after she heard it, and she said, you know, I never really liked the clarinet, but that sounds pretty good. So don't be afraid to do things with instruments that are not conventional, you know, matches with the harp. And again, I mean, no disrespect to flutists and violinists, but there is a big wide world of instruments out there. You know, marimba players and vibes players and all right. So
do I get to speak again?
Oh, I suppose so, since you
I am. a little bit about arranging and what we call a practical range. You probably don't want to throw things way up in the stratosphere at your cellist.
Or anybody.
Well, it's especially at 7 o'clock on Sunday morning. The practical range of the cello, I think, is like kind of up to high C, but noodling around up there can be a little bit treacherous. So you might want to, give them a warning, or maybe send it to them in advance, just to be polite. It's always a nice thing.
But that's why I say also, just learn what people are comfortable doing. If somebody is just, fearless and says, oh, whatever you want to do is fine with me. Well, take them at their word. Why not? We believe what people say, right?
Right.
So, just see what works. And you can always change it. Just because you make a decision now doesn't mean that it's set in stone. And by rehearsing with people, it goes through many generations or interpolations of things. And that's one reason it's hard for me to publish stuff, because I do stuff a little differently every time, and I think, oh, well, that sounds good too. I don't want to make a decision about which one it is, but you have to make a decision about what you want when you work with other people, because you have to tell them what you want them to do. And they're very willing subjects most of the time. Mostly. So another thing, I thought we would just demonstrate this whole bass line thing too. Because of the instrumentation that I was given, I had a cello player to do the bass line, and I wanted to do something with Every Time I Feel the Spirit, because I just think that's such a great song. And wouldn't it be fun to have kind of a walking bass under that? And so the cello did that, and so I wrote it. You want to play a little bit of the beginning the way I did it?
Oh, sure.
Now this is Pitts, and as pizzicato, and we're used to pizzicato because everything we do is pizzicato. But string players, as Greg pointed out in a recent rehearsal we had, if normal cello players look at a bass line like this, they're not going to really get in. Why don't you demonstrate what you mean?
And what she's talking about is we sit in the orchestra with 14 of our colleagues in the cello section. We're doing a pizzicato section that's lovely. But that is with any other instrument, with the harp, that's only going to travel to here. And a lot of us cello players were secretly frustrated bass players. We realized 8 years in that we should have been playing bass all along. Not all of us, but so
the smart ones.
So
you go on.
So we're not accustomed to playing a bass line and pretending to be a bass. So I put my bow down and I want to just rip the strings right off of the cello, and it's so and it's such a great tune that we can have a little fun with this.
See, so that's really fun. And you can hear the difference too. Greg added the part that was an octave when he started in the low octave, because I had written it in the higher octave so that I could get that nice chromatic thing. But think about what that might sound like. Just think about that. And also, I forgot to mention, ask people, you get to know kind of what different instrumentalists like as far as playing in keys. Anybody who's ever done a wedding where they wanted All I Ask of You, and the violinist comes in and you're playing in the key of D flat, so you have 5 flats, and they freak out. It's like, the string players are happy with sharp keys. And so, yes, 5 flats, you can read the same notes and play it in 2 sharps, right? So D is a really good key. In fact, I forgot to mention it on the other one. We were doing it as well. I've always played it in C major. Always. And then Greg said, well, gee, this would play better in, for the cello if it were just in D. So we just transposed it up a step. Ask people if you're having problems, sometimes it's because they can't get around the instrument as easily in that key. 3 flats versus 4 sharps could make very little difference for you, but it could make a big difference for whoever you're playing with. And also thinking about what keys you want to play things in. You know, sharp keys are a little brighter sounding, flat keys are a little darker sounding. So depending on what you're playing, you might want to think about what that effect might be in terms of just what kind of text, what kind of mood you're trying to convey, or in view of the text, what kind of thing you're trying to convey. So shall we do just a little bit of this so that you can hear this now? See, I don't usually play the melody on this, so you're just going to watch me have a little clam bake over here while he has all the fun. But how about like that?
Yeah, I had too
manage.
much coffee, so I was
Okay.
like, well, that. And bows down, cello players, so we can have some
Bows
fun
down,
with this.
bows down. Okay, so about like that's it. So that's another fun thing. And you can give that kind of a line to lots of people. You could give that if you have a bassoon player or a bass clarinet player or a saxophone player or something like that. It's just give them something fun to do. They are very responsive. They can be very responsive. In talking again about how instruments blend with the harp and the change, you know how it is where if you're doubling the melody with somebody, I hardly ever play the melody at the same time that somebody else is playing the melody. Almost never, because especially when you're playing pop music or you know, standards or hymns or anything where there's a soloist, I like to let the soloist have the freedom to do whatever they want with that melody. And it's my job as an accompanist to just follow them and support them. And so I don't double the melody per se, but it can be done in the interest of changing the color of a sound. You know, when you put a flute and double the melody, you know, like if you think of it in the orchestra, you know, one thing that we do in the orchestra sometimes is we'll double the piccolo part. And you, as a harpist, you know, when I was a kid, I would think, oh gosh, why do I even do this? I'm sitting here and I'm not even playing any notes. And then when I play, somebody else has the same notes and then I realized that it changes the whole sound. And people will say in the audience, I couldn't hear the harp. I saw you playing, but I couldn't hear you. What they hear is how we change the sound, how we change someone else's sound so that, you know, if we have a point we have an impetus on the front end of our beat, we have that attack. And so by giving a point to the piccolo player, it helps them with their articulation on something, or just you know, in a million other ways, just the way that it blends. And so so I think about that when I think about writing, you know, like the bass line. What I wanted to just demonstrate next is this idea of using that line to reinforce what I'm doing, or to give them something more interesting that also reinforces what I'm doing, and how that changes or enhances the sound overall. And again, this can have many other instruments added to it, you know, playing other parts. But in this instance, we're gonna play Abide With Me. And I'm gonna open by playing just the solo harp. The first 8 bars are just the harp, so you can hear get a sense of that sound. And then Greg is going to play, he's going to come in with the boring bass line part. Okay, this is the half notes and quarter note bass line part, okay, which we couldn't help but enhance in one part because it was too boring. So there is a little movement there, but not very much. And then the second time through, you'll hear a different version of the same bass line, but it's a little bit more melodic, because even if you're playing bass notes, you can think of inner voices, a tenor line or an alto line, in a more melodic way. What's a fun thing to sing? I mean, you know, when you give an alto part, you know, like, joyful, joyful, we adore thee, God of glory, Lord of love. I mean, who wants to sit there all those rehearsals to sing two notes? And I mean, it's just awful, you know. It's not awful because, well, it is awful because I would be singing that. That would be a problem right there. But anyway, so think in terms of how to make everybody's part a little interesting so that they have something to listen to too, instead of just enhancing somebody else's sound. So this is Abide With Me. And again, I'll start solo and then you can hear the difference. We'll just do that. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? And can you hear how beautifully that, even just that simple bass line, it gives a whole new texture to the whole sound. And it gives a support to the harp, especially if you're, well, you know, the iPad is all the way on the other side of the room, so maybe it is just like being in a hall. But you know, when you're in a large hall, this is going to help all your projection. But it's such a luscious sound. Again, I'm using, coming up, I'm using all these running 16th notes to kind of keep the motion going forward. The other parts in the multi-instrumental arrangement of this are a lot of them are doing long tones or the kind of melodic material that you just heard on the second verse of that. Also, there's an interlude in this one. I think, you know, having an introduction, you know, that's a little different from the hymn, instead of just like when you're in church in the traditional hymns and they play the last line of the hymn and then everybody sings. It's nice to have something different for an introduction. It's nice to have something, I like to have something that I can use for an introduction and maybe change the voicing on it when it comes after the next verse or whatever. As it happened, when I was doing this one, I realized, again, sort of like when I was doing Amazing, all of a sudden I thought, oh, this goes, Amazing Grace goes with this. I thought, oh yeah, what I must have been doing was kind of singing like a little descant thing to the normal melody to write as an introduction, because you can hear at the end where this interlude interfaces with the melody of the with the tune. And so doing things like that are just, it's interesting. It's not like it's necessary, but just thinking in terms of stuff that's compatible with the tune, and spreading the joy, sharing the joy, letting everybody kind of take a turn with the melody, which is another thing that we're demonstrating here again with playing in different registers and kind of having different functions. So should we start at C then?
Sure.
I don't remember what you have there. Oh yeah, that's right, okay. So here's our little interlude. So do you see what I mean about how different the melody can sound with, I did the same accompaniment, different clams each time, but I did the same accompaniment for each verse, but to give you an idea of how that interfaces depending on your register. And of course, there's always, you know, like a soaring flute line too, or you could give a descant line, you know, to someone, you know, in a high voice and do something like that. There was something else I was going to say while I was doing this, and now I can't remember. Oh, could you hear like a little counter melody almost in my thumb? You know, instead of it's more obvious in the arrangement of it as well, where I'm doing these. I'll go back to that just for a minute. So. Like a little other melody line, and I'm only one little person over here with 8 little fingers, but you can create a multi-layered effect that way just by doing a simple thing like just emphasizing your thumb, or like if you're you know, like playing on hymns at church. That's another thing. Like, well, everybody, well, you know, the little fountain. I know it's early in the morning, too soon to get nauseated, but you can use the same technique when you're looking at the hymnal. You know, you have these chords. Just take those chords. What in the world have I done? There's no B flat in the key of D. May I mention that? You can do that, and you'll be a little bit more audible because you've got all this fluffy stuff going on while the organ's, you know what I mean? So using that technique of just bringing out that top voice, just fun. It's just fun, and it gives you something to think about and to do something fun. I don't know what time it is, and I don't know what else I should be talking about. How are we doing?
You've got about
5 minutes-ish?
yeah, 5 to 8 minutes.
Okay, can you think of anything I haven't talked about yet that I said I would?
Well, where are we going for lunch?
You're all invited.
A boring but necessary thing to talk about for cellists is if you're arranging and you're putting things in an upper register. I have shown up numerous times to behold 16 ledger lines above the bass clef.
Oh.
And if your cellist can play in the upper register, it's the music world, they can read tenor clef and they can read treble clef. It's a given. If they can't,
don't write there.
I was going to say get somebody else, but if they can't,
be nice.
Just don't.
Be nice.
Sorry.
But the great thing about that is, you know, like when I was preparing these parts that he's playing have been synthesized from violin, viola, cello, and you know, flute parts. It's a conglomeration of many other things because I tend not to give one person the melody for the whole entire verse. You know, it just gives them a big head. They get too excited. So, you know, maybe the viola starts the melody for the first few bars and then the cello takes over and then the violin or something, and they take turns. But what I had to do was put this all in a range that was legible and make some sense of it for, you know, but the wonderful thing is that on the music writing programs, they have this wonderful transposing feature, and you can tell it what clef. Here's 8 bars. Put this in tenor clef. Punch the button, and it's done for you. You don't have to get out your college textbooks and remember how to write in tenor clef. It is not your job. It is the job of the machine that you have devoted your life resources to using as a service animal. Okay, so.
And at the same time, Ellie and I are good friends, and when she was putting all this together, she asked me, she says, "Do you want tenor clef? Do you want treble clef?" So talk to your people and find out what they really like that. You know, talk to the violist about treble clef also, because that's another thing. And
it's fun to work with people, and part of the joy of doing this is just. I'm not, you know, the last word in writing for harp with other instruments. It's just really fun. You get to play with your friends. You get to figure out what can work and what might be better next time, you know, or get an idea that would be better suited for another tune or something like that. But it's just fun. It's a community effort, and it's a chance to get to play together, you know.
We've got about 5 minutes.
Huh? Are there any
questions?
questions?
Unless there are questions, put a question in the chat and I will convey it to them. Otherwise, you want to play something that's so beautiful.
Well, I don't know. I just,
okay.
I was just, unless you want us to play one of these all the way through, but the way we did it, but we already did that. I don't know.
Someone has to have a question.
Okay.
Please, we're begging you. Put on your thinking caps.
The director is off camera going.
I always talk too much, and I'm afraid I'm so, you know, wary of getting too much in. But do we have any? Oh, please, you know, where did you buy your dress? I don't care, just anything.
Well, you did get a comment that how they loved the combination of the 2 tunes on the first one you did. How beautiful and unique it was.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a new message. Thanks so much. This was informative and amazing. What music writing software do you use?
Oh, I use Finale because it's the one that I got, and at the time that I bought Finale, that was the main music writing software, and I think it also came with a bunch of Harp plugins or something like that. The reason I like Finale, and I know that those of you who use Sibelius, if you have figured out a way to deal with this, please, please, please let me know, because I have Sibelius on another computer, and I use it. I used it to help a friend who only uses Sibelius, and he was editing Harp parts. So I did learn a little bit about Sibelius. But on Finale, one thing that helped me a lot with the pedal harp is that we have to, it's really polite to write in pedal changes, as you may well imagine. However, it's really cumbersome because on Sibelius, the only way I've been able to figure out how to do it is to do the drop-down menu and choose the letter name, then do a different menu and choose the accidental. And it's a similar process in Finale, but the way I know how to do it in Finale, there's a toolbar that has like fermatas and piano, pianissimo, blah blah blah, all of those things on it, and you can create your own what do you call them? And so yeah, those. So what I did was I didn't do it. My husband at the time, he said, this is too hard. So he put in D flat, D natural, D sharp, C flat, C natural. So he made all those little tools. And so that is that's, if you don't do it, if you have to do that every single time. So what I do is I just use that one file as my template for anything that I write for the harp. I just open that harp template file and I use that. And then when I want to put my pedal markings, I can just plug in the ones I know. The other thing is that the pedal diagrams, there's an easy way to do it on Finale where you type in certain letters and it instantly prints out the pedal diagram with the pedals in the right position and then line in the middle. And there are letters on the keyboard that you type a row of letters and it comes out as that. It's really convenient. The only way I know how to do it on Sibelius, my friend who uses Sibelius and is a phenomenal composer and conductor, and I mean, he's done big things. He said, oh, it's great in Sibelius because you just press this little thing and it makes a pedal marking on the measure you want. Yeah, but it doesn't take into account everything that came before that, and it has a default. The only way I know how to do it, I figured out that you could change the default so that the pedals that aren't in that measure are either all flats or all naturals or whatever, but you can't choose the key signature and it doesn't take into account everything that came before that. And for those of you who play pedal harp, you know that you get to measure 38 and who knows where your feet are at that point. It might bear no relation to the actual key signature. So that's one reason I really like using Finale instead.
Anna's doing a class on Sibelius later and she'll tell you how to do some of those things.
Oh, good. Well, then take her class.
She'll tell you how to do some of it.
I'm a sissy.
Have you got like a 2-minute, just to tag, do something you've already done?
Oh, let's do, well, they like the two things, so let's
do that
as
in
well.
2 minutes because it sounded so nice.
We'll do our little
and we'll
amazing
end with
grace
that.
at the end of it as well. You want to do that?
Yeah, it sounds so beautiful.
Let's start at okay.
I'm slow.
Let's start. Yes, yeah. Is that right? Yeah. Where you have Amazing Grace.
Oh.
At the end.
Yeah.
Okay, right there. Okay. Let's okay, so
It's my fault.
1, 2. It's, you have to count to 4 in this
Can I
business,
do
and it's so
can I do the
complicated.
and then we'll
Yes.
play together on maze?
Please do.
Thank you so much. It sounds
Thank you.
gorgeous.
Thanks for being here with us this morning. Thank you. And thanks to Bonnie. She's just done a yeoman's job. It's unbelievable.